I'm not sure if you've noticed yet, but the narrative is collapsing. So, yesterday, a slide was going viral, and it talked about how they were going to use essentially the intended outcome they wanted and then move backwards from there. So in Mankato, Minnesota, last night, the city council voted to keep the parks closed and other public buildings and offices until the middle of July. Yeah, the middle of July. I'm going to be completely honest with you. I don't like any of what's happening. I think most people have figured that out by now. But there is a giant wrench coming, and I hope people are buckled up for safety. Before we get to that giant wrench, let's just take a step back and watch exactly what's unfolding. First, in February, we have a drone bill. A drone bill in Minnesota. I had shared that link, I think, last week. The drone bill states that you can surveil people without a permit to do so if it's for health reasons or public safety reasons, okay? And a friendly reminder that in other states, they're doing surveillance on other people. I will just jump in here and say, Minnesota is corrupt as the day is long. I know that firsthand from spending ample amount of time up in St. Paul. And it's not just on one side of the aisle. Yeah, it's not. So we've got the drone bill. Now we have our governor who bought a $6.9 million warehouse to store the dead bodies. Interesting. We're buying a $6.9 million warehouse to store the dead bodies when we are far off from the projections. Except for, oh wait, he thinks that the peak is coming in July, and oh, they wanted to start with the intended outcome and go backwards and plan from there. We're not just going to follow the trending statistics. We're going to go with a fifth scenario now. That's what he's going to start talking about. That's what legislators are starting to talk about. A fifth scenario, where we stay at home until the end of May in this fifth scenario, and then it will be better. Do you remember when it was going to be better when we stayed at home for 2 weeks, and then another 2 weeks, and then another 4 weeks, and then another on and on and on? It's all a power grab. Now we have bipartisan contact tracing legislation. Do you want to be tracked? And what really irks me about this is the following excuse and line of thought for this stupid contact tracing bill that a Senate Republican drafted. And I think most people know which side of the fence, which I'll get to that in a minute, I typically sit on. Yeah, a Republican. Here's some fun facts about that bill. Remember, we have a warehouse for dead bodies now in Minnesota we're acquiring. And now we have a contact tracing bill. Inside that contact tracing bill, it talks about hiring over 4,000 people who are going to help people find out whether or not they have it or have been in contact with someone who has it. Yesterday, on a news clip that someone sent me from southern Minnesota, I watched Tina Liebling, who's a Democrat in the House of Representatives, talk about how it's optional and they're not actually going to make you do something that you don't want to do. And then I watched Carla Nelson, a Republican, a rhino, really interesting ties because she's from the Mayo Clinic area. I watched her on the news conference say, really overall, this is for the betterment of it all. At no point in time is it good for the government to track you. Anyone, any elected official who dares to even let that thought slip out of their mouth, do us all a favor. Don't run again. Don't do it. The thing is, there are far too many pieces of this puzzle that are lining up. And if you look at the original bill, when all of this started, the COVID bill, it talked about having these spaces where they could come in and they could take over and they could put kids there or families there or whatever for all of the COVID patients. Now, if you tie that to what's happening in Washington, because Washington's a few steps ahead of this little game of desperation to save themselves before their house of cards collapses. Now they're hiring people, and the ad literally says to watch children who have been removed essentially because they can't be around their parents because their parents are being quarantined. Does that ring any alarm bells? Drones, contact tracing, all of these things. Here's where I'm at. I believe in our God-given rights. I announced I was running for office about 3 months ago, locally, for our local Senate. The thing is, I don't appreciate being silenced or attempting to be silenced by people who happen to be wearing red because they don't like what I'm saying. And now we are seeing the true colors and which Republicans sit where. For the longest time, this nation has been divided. Democrats versus Republicans. This versus that. Over and over, they separate and divide us. Now they're using masks. Oh, the people who are wearing masks, the people who aren't. How long are we going to let this go on? Contact tracing apps. All of these things. Well, now we get to see who's sitting where up in St. Paul, don't we? We do. And I think it's absolutely asinine for people to expect those who have information to just sit here in silence. I call BS on this whole plandemic. Or it is a pandemic. It's a plandemic. That's what it is. It's a power grab for your freedom, for my freedom. Drones, contact tracing, oh, buildings for bodies. Oh, we have all of these other things all ready to go. And I'm not saying that to scare you. Here's where I'm at. I truly believe that when this journey started for me 2.5 years ago, when I started exposing what was happening in DHS, that certain entities were getting a free pass. And then I went up to St. Paul, and it was fine. The Republicans liked me. And I'm going to take flack for saying this, and I don't care. Because unless people start speaking up about what's going on in this state, it will never get better. You can't for 1 second tell me that because Trump is president, who, by the way, in my opinion, just hijacked the Republic Party and used it to restore the Republic, you can't tell me for 1 hot second that all of a sudden we should just trust everyone who sits in St. Paul who happens to be wearing red. No. Because if that were true, they would all be going out and standing with businesses in their area and telling them to open up. But instead they're saying, we're going to do a contact tracing bill because that will limit Governor Walz' authority, and then that will give us the path to move forward to open our business. You know what gives us the path to move forward to open our state and business? The Constitution. Yeah, try it. You might like it. But don't lose hope yet, and here's why. People in Minnesota are just waking up. At the federal level, people are waking up to Fauci, to Birx, to all of that. All of that's happening at the federal level. Now in the state of Minnesota, everyone gets to see what I've known for the last 1.5 years. It don't matter if you're red or blue. They don't care. It's all a facade. And if it wasn't true, we wouldn't have Senate Republicans up there drafting contact tracing bills, talking about alternative housing, talking about things of that nature. Instead, they would be defending the Constitution. You know, the document that protects our God-given rights. That one. We are about to watch them all be exposed. And I know this to be true because that is what God called me to do over 2.5 years ago when I started this journey. You know when things got interesting for me? I'll tell you when. When I started outing the fact that the same people in the data that I have that were being protected by the Minnesota Department of Human Services, when that got traced to campaign finance ties into the Republican Party in the state of Minnesota, specifically the HRCC, and a handful of elected officials who just happened to serve on key committees or chair them at the time that the legislation went through for massive increases in child care assistance, you know, the fraudulent CCAP program. If there's nothing to see, then why were those centers getting a free pass? Why doesn't anyone want to talk about the campaign finance? And now in the state of Minnesota, all of a sudden, Corona happens. And all the licensed childcare providers that are center providers get this list. No more licensing inspections until further notice. You can now have mixed age groupings. It doesn't matter if you have 100 staff, only one of them has to be a teacher, and hey, we're waiving the director qualifications. And I could never figure out why. Well, I'm about to blow the whistle on your little plan because I see where this is going. Oh, we have all the childcare centers empty. Why are the childcare centers empty? Well, because people aren't working, a lot of them. Oh, unless you happen to be the owner of the big yellow barn who somehow got a special magical favor. And you know what? It's fine if he wants to be open. Here's where I don't appreciate. Whenever a business is allowed to open, why don't they stand up and fight for the other businesses? They just sit down and are like, well, got what I needed. That's obnoxious. Don't do that. So, back to the childcare centers that are half empty. A lot of them are empty. Did they waive all those requirements because in their little plan, they're going to separate families? Is that what the plan is? Because it kind of looks like that's what's happening in Washington to me. Is that the plan? And I'm not saying that to scare people. I'm just saying it logically makes sense because I could not for the life of me figure out why all of a sudden they didn't care about licensing. They just dropped off the face of the earth. We're just not going to visit centers anymore. In fact, if you had a conditional license, meaning that in their mind you had done something wrong, all of this stuff just disappeared. And now I see why. The pieces are lining up. Drones, stand 6 feet apart so we can find you. Wear a mask or don't and we'll know who's rebelling. Contact tracing, you must do it to open your business. Oh, well now if we find out you were tied to someone, we have alternative housing. And gee, where are we going to put those kids at in our little plandemic? Oh, I know. Maybe in the empty childcare centers that are pretty much non-licensed, non-regulated right now. And gee, is that why we keep getting surveys from the Department of Human Services about how many openings we have or how we're operating or if we need any adjustments to our license capacity? Is that why? Do you think for one hot second that I'm going to take the kids that you yoinked from someone else's family because of your plandemic and stick them in my childcare center? Because I will not do that. Lucky for you, well, not lucky for them, lucky for us, the season of Haman is coming. If you're unfamiliar with that story in the Bible in the book of Esther, here's how it goes down. Haman thinks he's super, super smart, and he's just going to kill all the Jews. So he comes up with this plan, this really great plan in his mind. He builds the gallows to hang Mordecai. He gets this plan all set in motion. And then, just at the last second, when he thinks he's going to get some fancy award or something at a dinner conversation, boom, the plot shifts, and everything that he had planned happens to him. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is about to go down in this state in the coming months. People keep saying, why isn't AG Barr stepping in? Why isn't Trump stepping in? You can't have those people step in until most of the population is awake. If people aren't awake after the big yellow barn incident, when we can't have graduations, but we can have 200 people in a packed parking lot out in front of a big yellow barn, if people aren't awake after that, I don't know what will wake people up. We're clearly picking winners and losers in this state. But from where I sit, a little plandemic, it's ramping up, ramping up, ramping up. And I, for one, am tired of the division. I'm tired of saying, oh, well, I'm a Republican or I'm a Democrat. I'm an American. That's what I am. I'm a patriot. I'm a person who stands for truth. You can send 80 Republicans my way to try and get me to keep my mouth shut, but I will not do that because kids are getting hurt. That is what the DHS data shows. That is what the Head Start contract shows. That is what this rigged system tied to both sides of the aisle show. And I'm tired of playing that game. I'm tired of the game. I think a lot of people are tired of the game. It's time to use your voice and stand up. Help your friends understand and see the other side of this. Even Dr. Burke said, oh, well, I can't trust the CDC. This was on May 9th. I can't trust their numbers. Of course you can't. Of course not. But if you know anything about our president, you know that he is the master of using people for their own downfall. If you don't like it or you don't agree, I don't care. Move on. Because the season of truth is upon us. And we all have to get bold and courageous as our Lord called us to do in Joshua 1 verses 9. And if we're not going to do it now, then there will never be another time. Because we are in the middle of a war, all right? We are in the middle of a war against good versus evil. And the evil thinks it's going to win. But I can tell you right now, I didn't lay down and take it and play any of the shenanigans of the game of some of the swamp-tastic people of the GOP in this state. And again, I'm a patriot who is a conservative. I don't even know if I can say conservative anymore because so many people have abused that word in this state. I am a person who believes in our God-given rights and upholding the Constitution. That's what I believe in. And above all, I believe in the truth. I will not be bought. I will not be bribed. I will not be scared into silence. If I'm going to go down, I'm going to go down swinging because there's kids out there getting hurt. Kids are getting hurt, and we have families that could potentially be ripped apart in this state because of the stupid contact tracing bill. And if you think for one hot second that I'm going to turn my child care center into a place to hold those kids who are taken from their parents, you would be dead wrong. I will never open my doors to take children who you ripped from parents as part of your pandemic. The season of truth is coming. And if you're a legislator in St. Paul, you've had 2 years, especially if you're a Republican. You had the data. You looked at the data. I was actually in the Senate cover page on their Facebook for the Republican page until I started blowing the whistle on the campaign finance. Yeah, they don't want to solve the child care crisis in this state. They needed it, and they needed it for times like this. Half-empty child care centers, emergency child care grants. I see what's coming. I see the plan. No. You have a decision to make. Are you going to be someone who blows the whistle, or are you going to be someone who sits quietly while this goes on? We need more people in the state of Minnesota to wake up. We need more people to step forward and boldly tell the truth. But I'm telling you, if you're a representative or a senator, if you took the bribe, if you took the money, if you did something you regret, you're running out of time. But even Jesus left the 99 for the one. And some people don't like when I say that because they want there to be justice. You know what? I want there to be justice too. And it doesn't mean that there won't be punishment. But you are walking a fine line of trading your eternity for some stupid bribe to save yourself from some government plan to take our freedom gone awry. Is that what you want to be remembered for? Because I want to be remembered for standing up for truth, standing up for people's rights, and above all, for not taking a bribe when kids were getting hurt. And that is exactly what is happening. You tell me otherwise, Department of Human Services, why now we have a contact tracing bill, Republicans and Democrats, yeah, where we can take people and separate them in alternate housing. You tell me otherwise. I challenge anyone from the Department of Human Services who has met with me and asked me and pretty much offered me, Beth, Regina Wagner, we can just make this go away. Yeah, you wish it would go away. You wish I would stop talking about the kids you're hurting. You wish I would stop that, but I'm not going to. You wish I would stop talking about the campaign finance ties to the good old HRCC. But no, I'm not taking the bribe. If I'm wrong, someone answer me why all these child care centers are open. Why all the regulations that we needed all these years are magically removed. And why we can hire anyone we want, and why we can mix all of these age groupings. If you aren't about to try and put kids with this contact tracing bill, if that's not part of your plan to take them, and where would you house them in child care centers? If that's not part of your plan, then prove me wrong. But above all, I will not be silent about the swamp and the party. I will not. This is about red or blue for me. This is about truth and our God-given rights. And above all, kids are getting hurt. Hurt. And it's not just happening in this state. It's been going on for years. And I hope you're ready to see the truth, America and Minnesota, because it's coming out. And you're going to be surprised who's holding the bag.